Impulsive spending is probably the most toxic habit you can possibly have when it comes to your overall financial success, because it typically, by its very nature, being impulsive, is something you just make that decision on the spur of the moment. Versus money, the whole journey to becoming wealthy, comfortable, financially successful, independent, whatever it might be that you use as your benchmark, is a very structured and long-term plan. It very seldom happens by accident. So you need to create a plan and some action steps to follow consistently so it can compound and you can tick the right boxes off on the way through. So it's very measured, very structured. The opposite side of the coin is impulsiveness. And I guess everyone's personality disposition is going to be wired very differently in terms of what's good and what's not. But I would emphatically say that impulsive spending or impulse spending is the absolute most toxic habit when it comes to financial success. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. This week we are looking at the psychology of spending. It's an interesting thing, spending. Is it impulse spending? Is it trying to fill a void in your life? Is it constructive? Is it good? Let's dive into the mechanics of what the triggers are for people, how to avoid some of the pitfalls, and most importantly, how to have fun along the way. Plenty of things to take out of this, and as always, don't just take notes, make sure you take plenty of action. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter, and as always, my offsider and co-host, Mitchell Olarenshaw.
We've got a fun episode in play here, AB, because we've both got experience on both sides of the ledgers, and that is, of course, the psychology of spending. Do we love it? Do we hate it? How to get around it? How to do it? Big question.
This feels like it's going to be a therapy session.
It will. But you know what? The lessons that we can draw on here with, as I say, experience on both sides of the ledgers as spenders and savers, crossing between the two throughout our lives, we hope we can give some wisdom and some experience for our listeners out here.
Oh, let's get after it. What do we got?
Well, I think first things first, let's talk about, when we talk about psychology of spending, there's probably a lot of people listening to this saying, yeah, that's probably me. I'm a spender. And if you classify yourself as a spender, is understanding the triggers that lead to the impulsive style of spending.
Well, I like that. I like that term too, the triggers.
The triggers.
Yeah.
Things that make you go, I need to spend.
Impulsive spending is probably the most toxic habit you can possibly have when it comes to your overall financial success, because it typically, by its very nature, being impulsive, is something you just make that decision on the spur of the moment. Versus, money, the whole journey to becoming wealthy, comfortable, financially successful, independent, whatever it might be that you use as your benchmark, is a very structured and long-term plan. It very seldom happens by accident. So you need to create a plan and some action steps to follow consistently so it can compound and you can tick the right boxes off on the way through. So it's very measured, very structured. The opposite side of the coin is impulsiveness. And I guess everyone's personality disposition is going to be wired very differently in terms of what's good and what's not. But I would emphatically say that impulsive spending or impulse spending is the absolute most toxic habit when it comes to financial success.
Let's explore some triggers. So, for example, let's say alcohol might be a trigger for you. Let's say you've had a couple of drinks. That may be when you're more likely to spend more money on gambling, for example, which is a really basic one, but it's true for a lot of people. Absolutely.
You've put yourself in an environment potentially where you're exposed to that. Oh, having a great night. Let's just bat on. Let's go for dinner. Let's go clubbing. Let's go to a casino. There's all stuff we've all done, I'm sure. And then the next day, the repercussions of that are, look at your online bank statement, and that was a $2,000 night when it should have been, we're just going out for a couple of beers with the guys. Should have been $100. Well, today's money probably $200, right? And it becomes manifestly different. And you go, okay, it was fun, we had a laugh. But that overspend compounds too in terms of taking you further away from what your financial goal is. And I think, to be really transparent on this, Mitch, there's nothing wrong with color. You have to have color in your life too, but it's something that you have to budget for. And we'll get on to budgeting, I'm sure, in a few moments' time. Impulse spending, I think, is also directly correlated to the death scroll online too, insofar as if you are in that catatonic state where you're lying on the couch, just having a look.
New pair of shoes looks really cool.
Oh, man. Yeah, that looks good. Or, my back's really sore because I'm lying awkwardly on the couch, so maybe I can get this new stretching ball or something that's going to take that away, and then all of a sudden other stuff comes up on your feed, and I better get some, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of how that can work. So I think spending or impulsive spending like that, and I've always been of the view of this, is that you are trying to fill this void in your life, that you don't feel happy, you don't feel satisfied about something. it's very few people just happy spending. There's actually something behind it. They're happy because, and then it's the next part of that sentence, which I think is as a coach or a mentor is what I'm always interested to hear. And it might be that you're trying to impress someone. Maybe you're dating, or you've just come out of a long-term relationship, and so you need to upgrade your wardrobe so you can get out on the hunt and prowl, and you're going to start spending money going to different places you haven't done for a little while. Maybe being a bit more free with your cash to seem more attractive. And I think the old analogy, I think it's your dad's one, wasn't it? Everyone looks more attractive standing on their wallet.
That's right.
And everything that goes in between that is a particular pattern of behavior, and I think it's important to understand the reason why you have that. That's the easiest way of fixing it. It's not that I'm a habitual spender. It's like, why are you a habitual spender? What are you dissatisfied with? How does it make you feel? And how can we address that and get to the absolute cause, as opposed to just saying, try not to spend as much.
A trigger that might be worth sharing that I can personally say I've fallen foul of plenty of times is spending a little bit. That trigger then opens the gateway to spend a lot. So let's say I go and spend $100, and then I go, well, I'm in for a penny. I may as well be in for a pound. If I spend $200, it's not going to make too much of a difference. It's only $100 more. It's still $200 or whatever the number is. That can be a trigger for most people. As soon as you start, it can be very hard to stop.
Yeah, and if you've got a level of, if you're pretty stoic as you are, and not doing something, and this is I think true of any habit or addiction, is that sometimes it's just got to be absolute. You can't sort of half. Let's take recreational drugs as an example. It's illegal drugs. Stepping into that space, you either do or you don't. You don't do a bit. It's really simple. And if you step over that line and it's a little bit, it's going to become more. So better to leave that door shut than go down that pathway. If it's about drinking, if it's about other activities that you could do, and they can be on the positive side of the ledger too. You could become totally obsessive about exercise, and to the point where it's to your own detriment. It's about finding balance and trying to find better habits to replace not so good habits, I think, is key. And I think leaving the door shut is key, because you do get that creep if you start to do something. There's a terrific interview with Liam Gallagher from Oasis.
Oh, yeah.
And he's saying, like, what are your pet hates? And he said, because he's obviously been fairly notorious for his partying ways throughout his life. He said, when someone comes around and says, let's go to the pub for a beer. He said, you're not going to go to the pub for a beer. You're going, I've had my beer, I'm going home. It's not going to happen. You're there for 10, and then everything that comes on the back of it. And that creep is something that can very much happen with spending. If you've set yourself a budget and you've stepped over it, well, I'm over it now, I may as well keep going. Not a good place to be.
That's right. And look, as someone I can personally say who's a really good saver, I must say for myself, there's two things I would suggest is understand what those triggers are. And number two, set yourself a threshold. So I always said to myself, okay, anything above X, I'm going to sleep on first. So for someone, it could be $100, could be 1,000, it could be 10,000, depending on what stage. Anything above that threshold, you can't buy it right there. You've got to sleep on it.
That's a really good tip, to have that sort of fuse box that can just take all the emotion that was built up, and then that was really stupid. I'm glad I didn't do that.
That's right. This ultimately, though, comes down to habits. So let's explore someone's habits, because it's not just spending that goes into that pot. It's everything. Why are you spending, and what are you missing out on if you are spending?
Look, I think I think both of us would say, certainly one of the most impactful books I've read in an awful long time is Atomic Habits, James Clear's book, which is a brilliant book. And that is that if you've got habits that aren't serving you, whatever it might be, and it could be going to the fridge and every time you go there, hitting the dairy or biscuits or cheese or chocolate or whatever it might be instead of the fruit and whatnot that's in there. You've got to replace that not so good habit with one that's just slightly better. And so I think budgeting for people is important, because it sets out in a very black and white format where they're at. And you can't be financially successful if you're incapable of budgeting. And you might become very financially successful, but those old habits of budgeting still are there, because you look at costings and different things in that sort of space. So you have to have a budget, know where your money goes, because it probably goes in places you don't actually realize. It's like how you spend your time. If you did an account by minute or 6 minutes, say you're like a lawyer, every 6 minutes you're splitting your day out. And you went through and actually looked at how you spend your time versus how you tell people you spend your time is going to be quite different. Money is exactly the same. Where you do anything is how you do everything. So you go, I spent a bit on that. Well, actually, no, that bit was $250. oh, well, yeah, I had a couple of beers and I had a can of meal and then I couldn't drive home, so I had to get an Uber and I had the pokies on the way out of the RSL or whatever it might be. That's really quite dangerous. If you budgeted for that to happen, it's okay. A dear mate of mine in the financial planning space, when he's working with his clients who does stuff with us, you as you go through the budget with someone, they might say, look, I don't mind going to the tab. They're a bit embarrassed, but I go to the tab on a Saturday morning and going to have a bet on the races. Okay, that's great. As long as it's in the budget.
It's in the plan. It
and you've got
matter.
250, 400, whatever the number is that's set up for you to do that, to tick that box, to make you feel happy that you're doing things that you enjoy doing, that's cool. But when it puts the boot into your successful budget by, oh, no, I was supposed to save $500 this week, but just got a bit carried away Friday night, and then Saturday I ate badly, and then they got a takeaway, and I spent that $500 I was supposed to save, I've managed to spend. It's easy to do. And I didn't feel well. I was sat on the couch scrolling, so I ended up buying something as well, and da-da-da-da. Next thing you know, it's a disaster zone, and you can have a bad day or a bad week, but when it becomes a habit that becomes a monthly occurrence or an annual, you're just doing this for the whole year, you're really scuppering your chances of financial success. So you got to understand where it goes, as you say, and I think it's a really, really insightful point that you made, and that is understand what your triggers are and try and move away from them and find different things to insulate you from those triggers. Again, really, really important thing to do, and then being fairly disciplined as to trying to stick with that, but creating enough space for some colour so that it's not all hard work and smashing yourself.
Fun.
A little bit of colour in there as well, just enough to tick the box so that you feel that, oh yeah, that was good.
So this poses the question about taking a longer term view, and the way I've heard discipline defined as the greatest form of self-love, because you're giving up something you want now for something you probably want more later on.
You're on fire today.
I am. I just ran a marathon yesterday. I'm fresh as a daisy.
Endorphins are still pumping through the system.
Runner's high, right? So we take a longer term view, and I guess, we could probably use an example in politics, right? So I know you're mentioning there was tax cuts for Australians, which means that they're going to get money in their pocket, right? Money they shouldn't have already had or didn't know they were going to have. In your opinion, what are the temptations, and what's the other alternative?
This is a tricky one to try and sell because a lot of people are doing it tough.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, if you're given a bit of a financial lifeline where you've got a bit of extra money, particularly if you've been sort of week to week for a period of time, that release of the foot off the throat by getting a bit of extra dough back through the stage 3 tax cuts or tax refund feels like manna from heaven. The challenge, and as you rightly say, is you've got to play the long-term game, and if you're prepared to endure some short-term pain, the long-term benefits are extraordinarily positive, but you've got to be prepared to pay the price of admission for that. So if you take, and I've given this advice to plenty of people, probably one of the best examples of this is my sister-in-law. So she's an oncology nurse, and she used to pick up a couple of extra shifts at the hospital. And she said, "Oh, what should I do with my money?" And she's very good at. To say she is thrifty is an understatement. She is extremely careful.
I picked that up every second I spent with her. I could tell straight away.
At the same time, what she's achieved on her own, on an average salary as a nurse, is extraordinary in terms of property. She owns her own property. She's got her own car. Her debt's barely has debt. She travels with us, so she's travelled a little bit too. And she's played it really, really well. So the conversation we had, she said, I picked up some more shifts at the hospital. What should I do? I said, get your mortgage paid off. Just pretend it's money you've never had. Bear in mind, she doesn't spend habitually anyway. She always looks to habitually not spend, if I can put it that way. And I don't say that as a criticism, because I love her dearly and I love what she's achieved. But that ability to chunk down a mortgage. And so, she's got a cracking spot down in Byron Bay now. She's moved down there and she's done it on her own and she's done it herself. And people, did you get with your mum? No, mum and dad didn't give a hand out. Definitely not. And she did it herself by ignoring that extra money coming in the door to set herself up in a position that she now is. In the same way with the stage 3 tax cut. So let's say you're a $70,000, $80,000 a year earner, which is these days about the average salary in Australia. With the stage 3 tax cuts, you've got about $1,650 more coming back to you, or less in tax that you've got to pay.
It's a decent amount. It's a good amount.
And the temptation, especially if you've been through a fairly difficult time, as most people have been with the cost of living, and particularly so if you're an average or below average income earner, it's like, oh, well, I've got this extra dough coming in. We deserve some colour. It's been tough. the companies out there, they're smart. And you can ask yourself a really simple question, Mitch. Are you the hunter or are you the hunted? And if
typically hunted as the consumer, right?
100%. So the big companies out there, and I'll use JB Hi-Fi as an example, and this isn't a witch hunt of JB Hi-Fi because it's an absolutely fantastic business. I'm picking a story that I read in the Australian a few weeks ago. They've set up their campaigns and their marketing specifically to target those stage 3 tax codes.
That's brutal, isn't it? As the consumer, that's hard.
It is, but as a business, it's perfect because you know this money's going into the economy and people will want to spend it. And
Gotcha.
What better way of spending it than in a store that offers great value, great product, it's going to make you feel good, you're going to get your dopamine release, you got the latest white, shiny, smooth Apple, whatever it is, if that's the case for you or whatever it may be. So they're gearing up to be able to target into that. And as I say, that's not me, that was a great story that was in the Australian. Now, you might feel good that, got a new sound system or bought some music or some white goods or whatever it may be. The challenge is that 1650 that you had this year, and don't forget you're going to get it next year, you're going to get it the year after, you're going to get the year after. If you get in the habit of not spending bonuses when they come along and instead push that into an investment account. So over 20, 25 years, let's say you just plonk that away in an investment, average 10% return a year on it. And there'll be some people, how'd you make 10%? Look at what the NASDAQ's done historically over the last 20 years. There's 10%.
Pure index investing.
So very simple, in you go, off you go. You have something like 450, 500 grand lump sum.
Wow.
Or, which may put you in a position where that's your mortgage paid off, for example, or second, third investment property, if that's your pathway you want to go on, or what. But it's a substantial sum of money at the average income level, investing it for an index tracking return. So not much work involved with that, just the strength and fortitude to say, no, I'm not going to spend money I never had and never expected to get, and instead I'm going to park it to the side and invest. Here's a really good example. Or you can enjoy the white goods now, but you don't get the half a bar in
down the track
25 years time. So if you play the long-term game, would you rather have $500,000 in 25 years time, or would you rather have a new TV today?
That's right.
That's the opportunity cost for making those decisions, and it's a really hard conversation. As I say, so many people have been in a week-to-week situation or worse than, where they've been getting left behind in this cost of living. And that bonus, you think, finally something's fallen on my side of the fence, and it takes an enormous amount of focus and discipline to not dig into that and want to spend it.
Got to avoid your triggers. And this may sound woo-woo, but mindfulness is important, because taking that step back, that breath, and going, okay, really assess the situation, you'll find much better uses, as you've clearly demonstrated. And I think a good tip as we move forwards, AB, would be the whole notion of gamification, which we've spoken of many times in a myriad of different formats. Yeah. And it's true, if you can gamify your budget and gamify your spending, if I earn this or if I save this, then I get that. I picked that up from you many years ago, and I can safely say it's the number one reason why I've got a number of properties is because I gamified it. Only if I saved X could I spend Y. I was always in front.
It's you versus you always, and it can be fun. And I remember specifically in my life, and I've had to budget. Like, I'm in a fortunate position now, but when I was much younger, I've budgeted really hard. And I've scrimped and saved and done everything I could to build a nest egg, to get it to grow, to get into property, to leverage and grow. And I got into some bad spending habits. And it's not dissimilar to the conversation that we've had. Not so much, impulsive. 3 different ski trips to 3 continents in a very short period of time, because someone said, I'm going here, do you want to go? Yeah, I'll go. Or I used to go to the States, party every month. I live in Australia, so I've got to fly to America.
Accommodation.
I've got to get somewhere to stay, and then I've got to go and party, and then fly back. And
sounds like
2-3 days. Oh, it was great fun. Not the message we're trying to portray in the money and investing. Maybe
We've all been there.
The lifestyle show.
We can be honest.
And it was one particular weekend, and I've spoken to this previously in the podcast, and it was one particular weekend flying back, and you just sort of sit there mentally, and business was fantastic, I had plenty of cash, wasn't married, didn't have kids, and you sort of starting, okay, it was like a airfares, accommodation, it was probably a 20 grand weekend or something like that, and that was not a one-off, that was something that was starting to become every month we're off, and we used to go to the Playboy Mansion in Los Angeles.
Jesus, you're really selling me here, this sounds fun.
And it was a lot of fun. The opportunity cost of that, if I look back at that particular chapter and you go, okay, there's probably 2 properties that's that particular facet, well, maybe let's not say 2, let's just say a property, and noting what's gone on in the property market since 2008-9.
There's a couple of $1 million there, at least.
And I had a great war stories, and it wasn't at the expense of being able to invest because I was able to do both. But it's straight to the point that you could do this. So anyway, I'm on the way back with my mate, and he's in business. He's making some good coin too, and I said, "Hey, you doing?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Like we've done it a few times, so the newness and the excitement of a new thing had sort of worn off a little bit." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Like, just like it was good, but yeah." He said, "I know what you mean." I said, "Right," and we did the complete 180 to living like I'm not going to say a monk because that wasn't my social life then, but the notion of spending. So we made a pact with each other. Anything over $100, we had to call each other to say, "I'm looking to do this."
That's tough.
On the back of fairly gratuitous spending at that point in time. It was brilliant, and it became a game. He said, "I only spent $36 this week." So I was out for clients took me out for dinner one night, and I had this on and did this, and yeah, $36. Went to the airport, got my razors from the Qantas lounge. I haven't even bought razors. It just became this game. And it's not like living like a pauper because clearly you're not. It's a choice that you're making to go, I've got the willpower to say no. Just like you would have a half-open jar of Nutella in your fridge that will last you the next 4 months because you'll have one spoonful and put it back in because you've got strong willpower when it comes to that particular
you know me too well.
Discipline. That was the same with money. And it doesn't have to be a stick to beat you. It becomes a game that becomes great fun where you actually enjoy not spending. Where that becomes problematic is as your life changes. So I still hold that particular gamification.
I know. I'm still waiting on a new office chair, Andy.
You get one. We're moving on Friday, so you get a new chair on Friday. But that notion of it is a really good habit to have. Now, that's not to say I don't spend money. I do. And I go through my phases that are possibly, a little maybe gratuitous. But the process I have is rather like yourself. If it's over a certain amount, I really do think about it, and I also look at where if I have to buy this, where can I do this in an effective and efficient way? Whether it's through structuring, and it becomes an expense within any one of the myriad of different entities that I have, or is it something I can write off? Is there a tax benefit somewhere along the line, or whatever it might be? And I really do dwell on that. And it annoys the heck out of Emma, my wife, because she's just like, you can afford it, we can afford it, just do it. And I still struggle with that sometimes. And then after you've done it, and there'll be people listening to this that go through the buyer's remorse phase, where you've just done something, you've bought it, and you go, how cool is that? And then you go, wonder if I've done the right thing.
We've all had it.
And you look around online, I could have bought it cheaper there, or what's it worth if I had to move? Yeah, all this stuff that you do where you get in your own head. And that too is not a great habit, because if you make decisions for the right reasons in the right way, not because of what somebody else is going to think, but because it's going to benefit you and your family, if you're in that situation, or it's going to benefit your business or whatever it might be, you can spend that money, and you can spend it with a clean conscience because it's good spending, rather like we describe good and bad debt. Sometimes there's bad debt, which you don't want, and then there's good debt, which is okay. Spending can be good spending too. It's not all lumped in the same basket of tut, 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 wag the finger. Shouldn't have done that.
I agree. You've got to have some colour, and you've got to hit goals which can justify some rewards.
Well, then
that's means
you have
spending,
to.
Then.
And again, for those people that follow our podcast regularly, is something that both you and I struggle with in terms of not achieving goals or setting audacious goals in some instance, but actually rewarding that action. And I think that can be so toxic, not rewarding, because you move on to the next thing without savouring the win and having anything really tangible to show for it other than a box ticked in the achievement scale.
That's right.
So there we go. So it's give us some examples of give us something. Put some skin in the game. Mitch.
Here's a big one
Go
for
on,
me.
let's have some Mitch skin in the game. Give us something.
I'm about to reach a very specific chapter in my life, and I said to myself, by X age, I wanted to have X, Y, Z, and most of that is financial, in terms of net worth, number of properties, and so forth. I said to myself, if I did all that, then I would go to Europe and I wouldn't worry about what it costs, fly business class, do all that, which for my age is pretty obscene. I've done all that. I'm about to head to Europe in 2 weeks, and I can't wait. I don't feel guilty. Anything that costs, anything I've had to book or prepay, I don't feel any guilt, because this was the chapter that closes, and this is the reward to close that chapter, and I'm so happy that I've done it. It's cost me a fortune.
I'm happy you have too, because I think it crystallizes the journey that you've been on, and you've done it the opposite way around to, I would imagine, a lot of your peers. I don't know if you sent the email around saying, hey, who's up for a trip, who fancies going to Europe? Most people front load and do their travel early.
That's right.
And and then get round to the business of, okay, I've got the travel bug out.
Now
got to
I
settle
start
down into my
saving.
career, start
Yep.
saving, done it. And you've done it the opposite way, which is a conversation we had a long time ago, and done it brilliantly, because you're well on the way of where you will end up. You've taken the big bite out of it already, the hardest bite really, because it's come at a sacrifice of things that people of your age would be doing every weekend. You've chosen not to, because you've gone down a different pathway, and so there's some colour for you now. And just bear in mind, especially I know where you're going. If you go to Capri, you'll be wanting some coin there.
Oh yeah, I can
Alphonse
imagine.
Nell Beach Club. Make sure you get in there.
I've heard.
It's a terrific cash extraction facility.
Oh, yeah.
You'll have some fun there. It's a good spot.
Yeah, indeed. But you know, has to be done, because if you have these audacious goals and you hit them, you have to reward yourself. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it, really.
Yeah, it's crucial, and we do that in the money and investing journal system. Each goal that you set, and it goes through, why is the goal important to you? What are the action steps you're taking towards it? How are you going to know when you've accomplished it? And then finally, the blank box in nearly all of my journals.
What's the reward?
What's the reward for doing it? It's like the reward
Mine are
is I've
always
ticked
blank.
another box. Yeah, I've
Always
done it.
blank.
Move on to the next quarter, and,
Yep.
and away you go. But I think, you know, what you've done and the carrot that you've given yourself is huge. And when you do sit on that plane and sit back and have a bit of time to contemplate, because you've got 23 hours or so to do that, you can understand that the very, very small steps, sacrifices in some cases, or additional work in others, or discipline in others, those matrices that come together is why you sat there, and why you should be able to sit there without feeling the least bit of guilt or anything, because it's 100% earned through consistency and small steps daily towards that goal. And we talk to the point that any day that you don't do anything towards a goal, you've actually moved further away from it, because you won't get that day back either. So not only have you not made progress, but you've lost time. And it's that discipline, I think, is the key. And I know you've had plenty of colour on the way through too. I know you've worked pretty damn hard to get there, and I know that you've taken a longer term view of, this is where I want to get to, and these are the steps I need to do today, this week, this month, this year, in order to make that happen. And this, I hope, is the first of further adventures as you move into that chapter. But I know you're going to have a heck of a time. Hopefully we can catch up in Rome. I think there's an overlap for about 2 days.
That's right, indeed. And look, great lessons, because without the lessons that I learned early on, you know, I wouldn't be in that situation. And I think our listeners can take a lot from this. As basic and as broad as this may seem, it means a lot.
I mean, to that point, yes, our listeners can do that, but that's the great thing about doing a podcast every week. And I appreciate we're probably over time and we're off piece with where we're going with this, but this is something we've actually documented quite publicly. If you go back and, for example, look at our goal setting that we do every January, we'll be into our 5th or 6th one this year.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked personally about what we've been wanting to do, how we're intending to do it. So it's a journey, I hope, you know, for our listeners, that they've been on, to see that this isn't just some claptrap that, they'll throw this together to give you a bit of a pump up.
Yeah, go back and date it.
Have a look through and listen to the little milestones along the way and how they've snowballed and accumulated to where you've got yourself. So good on you, well done. Enjoy it.
Thank you very much for the lessons, AB, and for our listeners out there, we hope they've enjoyed.
Oh, good. I hope so too. There you have it, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, hit the notification button. We look forward to hosting you next week.